and my apologies. I'm trying hard to take it back. So if by the time...
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer. I'm playing Fun by... I have no idea. Oh, they're named Fun, and the song's called We Are Young. The only reason I'm playing this song is most of the episode is going to be dedicated to ESPN's new 25 players under 25 years old. Thought this song was a little fitting. Kevin will be joining the show in just a bit, waiting for him to get here. But before I go into it, I'm going to be talking to my dad in just a moment about some baseball news. I'll do a little, upkeep here. You should follow me first on YouTube. It's probably the best way to get all my up-to-date news. Blue Milk Boys Gaming is that channel. Just did a podcast with Kevin last Monday. We do something every Monday. Either it's about a movie or anime. This time it was about one of the most classic animes ever made, Neon Genesis Evangelion. So for my sports listeners, if you don't watch anime, maybe your kids do, or maybe you know a friend who does, I recommend they go check it out. There's lots of stuff on the channel. Going to be doing some classic horror soon. But yeah, we'll just get right into it. I'm bringing on my dad, and this story is unbelievable, Dad. I really can't believe it. I'll explain it real quick. So Dusty Baker, if you guys don't know, he's the manager for the Houston Astros. When they were playing the Angels, fans were throwing fake trash cans and real trash cans onto the field. And we've known their entire tour this season, people have been booing them and mocking them. This is just kind of because they were sign stealing. They were hitting trash cans, and that's the whole kind of narrative there. Dusty Baker comes out and has a couple comments, which I'll read right now in response. And let's see if I can pull it up just real quick. Dusty Baker says this, quote, "How many in the stands have never done anything wrong in their life? We paid the price for it. How many people have not cheated on a test or whatever at some point in time? I mean, it's easy if you live in a glass house, but I don't think anybody lives in a glass house." He continued, "I think that sometimes we need to look at ourselves before you spew hate on somebody else. It's a sad situation for America to me when you hear things. I mean, what are your kids supposed to think in the stands? And some of them are kids that are following their parents. It's sad to me. People make mistakes. We paid for ours, and I wish they'd leave it alone." Okay, Dad. Well, the first thing you have to address is, did the Houston Astros really pay a price for cheating in the World Series? We'll start there.
In my opinion, they were not given a harsh enough penalty. The players obviously got away with zero penalties. I mean, nothing happened to Jose Altuve or any of the rest of the players on that squad. All they asked those guys to do was to talk about it. They gave me immunity, which is terrible. I think Jose Altuve should have been suspended maybe for the rest of his career, suspended from baseball indefinitely for what he did, even though he'll tell you he didn't do anything. It's disgusting to me. I've lost respect for Dusty Baker. He should be saying things like, I understand how the fans feel about it. I don't condone them throwing things on the field, but, from the fan perspective, he should take some type of understanding.
I agree with you. So I'll now lay out those harsh penalties that he's kind of displaying here. So manager Jeff Lunau and manager AJ Hinch were suspended by MLB for the 2020 season without pay. And then, of course, the team fired them. And the Astros were stripped of 4 high draft picks and slapped with a $5 million fine. I mean, if you cheat, Dad, and you still win the World Series, that's not punishment at all. And besides, they should have lost the World Series. I mean, they shouldn't be even eligible for the playoffs. We see this in college football quite a bit. Teams kind of leave themselves out. Sometimes the NCAA has to do it. So first of all, do you think they should have had the World Series stripped from them? And secondly, do you think they should even be eligible, no matter what they do in the regular season, to be in the playoffs?
I agree with you. They should not be able. It should be like some kind of NCAA penalty where they're on probation, no matter what their record is. Say they come in first place and they're supposed to go to the playoffs. No, it should go to the other team. Something harsher than what happened to them, because what's stopping them from cheating again? If the penalties is what they got, it was nothing. They could just go on cheating and win World Series. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the key to what his statement was. It says, what will the kids think? The kids? What conversation are we having right now where the kids are the main issue when you're teaching them to cheat, and that if you cheat, that there's a positive message. Now, he wasn't the manager at the time, when they cheated in the World Series. But of course, how can you try to speak on behalf of the Houston Astros and try to say what the example of what kids are? That's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, they're ruining the integrity of the game of baseball.
Oh, totally. I mean, I just have no respect for Dusty Baker anymore. I would have had respect for him had he not been the manager. Had he told him, you know what, I don't want your job. I don't believe in your ways. You cheated baseball, and I'd rather go manage in the minor leagues. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be insane. But of course, they were one game away from making the World Series last year, and they look good again this year. So obviously, there was no punishment dished out at all. I just think that's a really big storyline that no one's talking about. So I wanted to take time out of the show now to do that. But let's transition over to the Raiders, Dad, who are a little bit active in the last week compared to most. Free agency kind of came to a halt, and players are being singled out probably once a week versus every day. We're waiting for news. Raiders are bringing back Carl Joseph, the safety, who I was a pretty big fan of. He had that bad injury a couple of years ago that kept him out for the season. Do you remember Carl Joseph, Dad? I'm sure you do. And do you think it's a good pickup to bring him back with the team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need personnel. This guy is young and he's got a lot of talent. He'll be the best one on our squad right away in the defensive backfield. I'm hoping they're still pursuing, trying to get other guys back there to help out, like Richard Sherman. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for us to sign Richard Sherman. And I think he told me we were talking off the air that there may be talks about bringing Clowney in, which I'm not sure how great that is, but there's a name.
It is a name, and they need all the help they can get. So if they can get Clowney and Richard Sherman, at least it's a little bit of notoriety to the team. But it's just kind of sad. I would say with those two guys, I mean, we at least have as good of a defense as we've had in the past 5 years. If they can get both of them, is that worth anything to you?
No, because we haven't had a good defense in the last 5 years. So I don't know how much greater it'll make us. Still don't believe we can make the playoffs with that squad. I don't know what to say about it. We just don't have a good defense.
It's just really bad, and there's a lot of work to do. And we'll talk about the draft a little bit. It's coming up on the 29th, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know, Dad. There's so many holes in this team, so many. And a lot of people think the Raiders are going to go offensive line. Some people think they're going to go receiver. I mean, you can't fix all of your problems in round one, but who do you think, what position should the Raiders be targeting at the 17th spot to maybe help this team as much as possible?
It should be focused. We should be focused on a linebacker, a pass rusher, a defensive back. I mean, if our first pick is not on defense, then I'm really going to be discouraged. I mean, I understand if you pick a great offensive lineman. I mean, that helps, but we just can't stop anybody. We can't stop people on third down. Just go look at the lines of a Raiders game. Go to the sportsbook. It's going to be a high total every time because we just give up a lot of points. I mean, it just needs to be addressed. It has to be addressed at some point.
Yeah, and I hope it will. So next week, I'm actually going to be doing a mini Raiders mock draft. So I'll maybe run that by you, Dad, and we can talk about it. But I want to do one more checkup for our podcast, and I keep trying to promote it every single week. I just watched Moneyball, and I got to say, it might be a little tease. It might be my favorite baseball movie of all time, where it's getting close to there. I mean, that is a great story. The acting is amazing. Tell the listeners a little bit about your experience with Moneyball, and if you like it as much as I do, or at least a little bit.
Oh, I absolutely love the movie. The acting is top notch, obviously. They really told the story in a great way. I mean, before I watched that movie, I didn't have any idea about how they came up with that roster and the idea of trying to put guys with just numbers. We need this guy to do that guy to do that. It's a wonderful movie. The way they portrayed Billy Beane was just great. I mean, we really like the character and the person. It's one of my tops. It could definitely be discussed as number one. I mean, it's up there. I mean, and I have probably a top five that's going to be very difficult. Baseball is a very difficult movie topic to come up with the number one movie. Hard to beat The Natural still, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I really haven't made up my mind just yet. So we'll be recording that first episode pretty darn soon here. I think I have 2 or 3 more movies to watch. I know you're all the way caught up, and we'll make sure we let you guys know about that. But thanks for coming on the show again, Dad. Great conversation, especially good timing with our baseball podcast, Talk Baseball Today.
Definitely. I can't wait for the podcast. Really looking forward to it.
All right, Dad. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So yeah, Kevin is still going to be joining us, but since he's not here just quite yet, probably a little bit of traffic at this time of the day, I'll start this list. So if you guys don't know, ESPN did do a 25 under 25, meaning they ranked the top 25 players that they felt were under 25 years old. What I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go just a little bit of, one by one. I'll give you a general idea of if I think they should be lower, if I think they're ranked too high. And then I'll give you my top 10 of rookies, or I should say 25 players under 25. I'm not going to go through the entire list, although if Kevin is a little late, maybe I will extend that a bit. I'll explain my choices, and then we'll just go from there. So number 1, of course, is Luka Doncic. I don't know if there's much argument there. You could say Zion Williamson, but Luka just affects the game in all different ways. And more importantly than Zion, because of course this is a pretty heated topic, I would suppose, a pretty good debate. Luka has obviously impacted winning. He's shown how he's able to play up to the moment in the playoffs. That's super important. And Zion Williamson this year has been, near perfect. People are comparing him to Shaq, and yet they just lose by, they give up 130 points regularly, and one player is not going to be able to stop that. But he hasn't figured out how to impact winning just quite yet. And that influences a lot of my list. It's not about objective skill because it's hard. System players in certain places. Coaching, I guess, is also a factor. One of the names in my top 10, this guy is, how far down? He's 16 on ESPN list. He's in my top 10. So clearly we have different parameters. And I just talked about Zion Williamson, who often shoots like 14 for 16, 36 points, a bunch of rebounds. I think he's a little overrated when it comes to handling the ball, when it comes to passing. I'd be curious to look at his turnover and assist ratio, and I'll try to actually look that up right now. But the Pelicans stink, and it's not like it's a lack of talent. Now, you could say it's coaching, and I, of course, was very much against their coaching hire. I can't even think of his name now. It's how disgusted I am. He was a former announcer, and his brother announces too. Not what they needed, but in any case, right now, he's averaging 3.5 assists and 2.5 turnovers. I mean, this guy has close to a 1.0 turnover assist ratio. In his rookie season, he did have a negative one, 2.5 turnovers and 2.1 assists. This narrative that he's some sort of LeBron type player, the only thing they have in common is athleticism. I think his shot is extremely janky. This guy shoots 37.5% from the three-point line, and he doesn't even attempt a single one per game. We got to slow the roll a little bit. I guess you can compare him to Shaq, but I think he's like 6'7". So I don't know where to feel with him, right? He's also had these injury problems, and he's a little too big for his size. And I'm not talking about his frame. I'm talking about just weight. And of course, everybody's body's different, and he seems to carry it quite well. But I'm thinking about the longevity of his career. If he continues to do this to himself, I mean, his knees are going to be busted. I think it's just natural for that to happen. LeBron James, we know, has had freak athleticism, but I would say at no point in his career was that the sole thing he depended on. Maybe his rookie seasons. I mean, I didn't watch him that much, but from highlights, it looks, it was all about jumping. But we know that LeBron today has been a point forward, and I don't really see Zion being that. Of course, he will become a better passer. His assist to turnover ratio will likely get better. He's surrounded by great players right now. Steven Adams was, close to an all-star, a very good defensive center for a very long time. Eric Bledsoe is a veteran who's had good games. Lonzo Ball, who is on this list but lower, obviously is his teammate. And Brandon Ingram, who is close to the top 10 in most everybody's, not mine, and I don't think this ESPN list. But to have that much talent on one team and for you to be losing in the standings over the Memphis Grizzlies, I think there might even be a game below the Sacramento Kings, who are an absolute embarrassment. Let me take a look here, and I'll go to the standings. I'm actually just quite curious. I paused for a second because the Grizzlies are going to lose in overtime, and that's heartbreaking to me. The Pelicans are one game above the Sacramento Kings. that just simply cannot happen. And it can happen for a player who is the leader of a franchise. That's the difference for me. For John Morant, I'm not going to put him over there as a Memphis Grizzlies fan. That would be ludicrous and just untrue. But at the very least, John Morant gets a lot of credit for just believing in the Memphis system. So that's my opinion on Zion Williamson. I'm not a number one hater, but of course I'm not going to be his number one. I'm not going to be at Zion Williamson fan 1 on Twitter anytime soon. Number 3, this is where it gets a little insane. Of course, the rest of these are just completely opinionated. I think those 2 are pretty much set in stone. They played LaMelo Ball. All right. He was averaging 20 points as soon as he became a starter for the team. I think Devontae Graham got hurt. He was impacting winning. They were the 4th seed in the East at one point, but I think we need to slow our roll a little bit. Not as talented as his brother defensively. The intangibles that he has is the ability. He has a I'm not ready to call it an elite skill set yet, but on the dribble, I think he is elite. Probably not as good as Kyrie. I'm not sure anybody ever will be as good as him when it comes to handles, but a very good diverse range, able to take people off of the perimeter, get to the rim, high athleticism. And he does have the fundamentals. I think all of the Ball brothers have, that. Their shooting forms are all wonky because of their dad, and he kind of just let that happen, or that's the way they taught them. I don't really know how that works at all. But I think 3 is just a little too high. He's going to be in my top 10, but come on. We're going to let this small sample size on top of now he's hurt. So a lot of these guys on the list have been very healthy. Luka Doncic rarely misses time. Devin Booker rarely misses time. Ben Simmons, of course, missed his rookie season, but beyond that, De'Aaron Fox is also very dependable. He's going to need that moving forward, and it's an interesting prospect. I think ESPN made this one just to kind of make a big statement. This is the headline grabber. LaMelo's at number 3, and that's the reason they did that. Number 4, I'm not going to argue too much. That's Donovan Mitchell. There's a very multifaceted layer to this. So when we talk about the Utah Jazz, who's more important, Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert? Well, to me, it's Rudy Gobert, and it's him by a country mile. He is the definitive defensive player of the year, probably once again, besides doing that in the past 2 years and being the best at it. And the thing is, I felt like if Donovan Mitchell, missed extended time, let's say 10 games, I think they could survive. Bogdanovich, Joe Ingles, Mike Conley, go down the list. Jordan Clark, who is probably going to win 6th Man of the Year this year. So when I say that, it kind of deviates from the idea that Donovan Mitchell is just so high up. Now, is he bad? No. I would love to have Donovan Mitchell on my team. He would be a great fit for the Memphis Grizzlies. Hopefully I can connect the 2 GMs to make that happen. Of course, it's not. He has the thing that I do like about him, and the reason why he is so high up on my list, I don't think it's number 4, is his ability to live up to big moments. He did that in the playoffs last year, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. He was in a battle with Murray, and he just ended up winning it. And I think the Nuggets were just a little bit more prepared to do that. So he's a player that you're going to want to build around. The thing I think that is his worst trait is he doesn't make his teammates better. He doesn't make them worse. It's just somewhere kind of in the middle. He does his thing, doesn't shoot very well. I don't think he's ever shot over 50% in a season, nor has he gotten close. I think he's like a 43%er. So he's a volume scorer, and that's been an issue in the playoffs so far. One of the 50-point games he had, I think he was shooting like 38%, 42%. So you can kind of say, well, if a team shoots 42% from a game, do they win? It's kind of a toss-up, and I think that's what we're seeing. And I think moving forward, it's also going to be a big problem for this team just in general. You kind of like to see him get to the line a little bit more and maybe help his team out that way. Did his season change when Shaq approached him during TNT? I talked about this on one of my shows where he kind of called him out, told him he wasn't a franchise player. It fell on deaf ears, but I do actually think it was a big moment in his career. I think he was listening to it. Looks like Kevin might be here. He'll have to let me know. He just texted me RJ Barrett, and we already know he's going to talk about that. He's a player who did not make this list at all. So we'll move on here. That was Donovan Mitchell. Number 5 is Jason Tatum, another guy who I'm just not in love with. And this is the way I think about it, right? He has an elite skill set. I'm ready to say that right now. I don't think I've used the word elite outside of Luka and Zion just yet. For those other two guys, LaMelo Ball and Donovan, I'm not sure I can say that for either of them. Jason Tatum has good ball handling for his size. He's listed as 6'10". I think he's more like 6'8". He doesn't really seem that big. We know he can score. He can score very well. He can score over anybody. He is athletic enough. There's some really big issues here. You can say it's on Brad Stevens, saying that he's kind of lost the team. The team has lost its motivation to play. But when those kinds of things happen, don't you want your franchise player, which is what Jason Tatum is, they want him to be the best player in a championship team. If anyone wants to argue that point with me, go ahead. That number for the studio is 702-221-7283. What I'm trying to say again is that Jason Tatum is being proctored up as the best player on a championship team. He's the LeBron James. He's the Kevin Durant. He's the, Kobe Bryant. Like, that's the kind of figure they want him to be, and they think he can be. I have not seen that from him. I haven't seen that drive, that Mamba mentality, if you will, that killer instinct. He just seems to know how to play the game, but he also has these bad nights in the regular season, and more importantly in the playoffs, where they're just kind of stinkers. 2 for 14, he's not involved, and he forces himself. If he's missing it from the mid-range at the elbow, he will take 3 more within the same 3-minute span. I think a little bit of self-awareness would go a very long way for him. They need a lot of development out of him, and right now they're fighting for their playoff lives. When you talk about how talented they are, on top of how bad the East is, you want to talk about horrible. Let's go down the Eastern Conference and talk about who's above them. The Charlotte Hornets without LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward. That's unacceptable. The Atlanta Hawks, a very young team that's just kind of hot right now. That should, like, where you are having 2 all-stars on your team when the Atlanta Hawks had 0. As a star player like Jason Tatum, I can't see that happening. Now, the players below him, I'm not sure any of them have proven that either, which is kind of a problem on this list, actually, in general. I'm not sure if past lists have been more hopeful or during periods of time. Like, this is the future of our league. Clearly, that's the whole point of the list. And when I'm saying all these things and I'm criticizing them so much, are we really just going to have to wait for the Kevin Durants and LeBron James and Steph Curry of the world to retire? Or will those guys, through the end of their career, start taking these chips? Because some of these guys are going to have to step up and start hoisting rings. These classic all-star veterans can't play forever. We'll see. Maybe there's going to be new talent coming in. Cade Cunningham, people are very high on. And I'm not saying Jason Tatum can't do that, but I need to see more from him before I'm convinced, for his longevity and what he can do for the Celtics and whether or not he can be the best player on a championship team. At number 6, another guy who I think is a little too high, De'Aaron Fox. Good stats. I'm actually going to look him up right now. I'm curious to know what he's averaging this season. He has been improving. He actually seems like one of the only players who can improve for the Sacramento Kings. And he's very athletic. I'm trying to go through it here. Is he a great shooter? Let me look at his stats right now. What is he shooting from 3-point range? His effective field goal percentage is 52.4%, which is a career high. He's shooting 32% from outside, but I'm not going to say that 3-point shooting is the only important thing. 1.4 steals. You kind of hope that'd be better for how athletic he is. 3 turnovers a game, tied for a career worst. 7.1 assists, which is a career high. So, I mean, you're scoring 24 points. You have the 7 assists. The future is very bright. But again, I'm talking about impacting winning on talented teams. He's in the West, so you have to give a little bit of credit here. But in no way should the Sacramento Kings be, I don't know, they should be well above the Warriors, who have been an absolute just dumpster fire this season the entire time. They had some horrible losses recently, and I attribute these to De'Aaron Fox. Marvin Bagley clearly is not going to be the guy for them, and he's not on this list accordingly, very much so. He's been too injured, and he's just been okay when he's been on the court. Take a look at this. I'm going to read you some of their recent games. They lost by 12 points to the Detroit Pistons, lost by 10 points to the Timberwolves, lost by 1 point to the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis, and they also took a 20-point loss to the Lakers without LeBron James and without Anthony Davis. Is Luke Walton a really bad coach? Yes, I agree. But this also stems from the same issue that the Celtics are having and the issue I have with Jason Tatum. You have to find a way to rise above that in order to help your team be successful. You're never going to have the perfect coach, or very rarely, unless you play for Popovich or you play for the Heat coach. Other than that, there's just not too much. LeBron James has always elevated his coaches. Now, has he gotten some of them fired? Yes. And, maybe like these guys have to take that approach too. I'm not sure what it is, but this silent kind of, I'm just doing my thing, getting my stats, and everything else should fall in place. No, like, you need to take on the leadership role in your organization, or else nothing is going to happen, especially for the Sacramento Kings, who are a small market team. They have 4 guys who are the pillar of their franchise. Talking about Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, again, who I know is going to go down as one of the worst picks in the NBA history. It's going to be, compared to like the Michael Jordan draft and the Kobe draft probably. But he's not as bad as those guys were if you're going to replace those names. But they need more out of him as well. De'Aaron Fox, great all-star, but no, he does not belong here because, again, I need to see more out of the Sacramento Kings before I say that. Number 7, I have Ben Simmons, or I should say they have Ben Simmons. This is a peculiar case as well. All these guys have massive caveats, which I think is part of the most fascinating part about this conversation just in general. None of these guys are proven at all. None of them have championships on this list, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. But Ben Simmons is one of the best defenders in the NBA. I don't think anyone can debate that. I'd be open to hear a conversation as well. But he's an elite rebounder. He's pretty good in the paint. He's also a great passer. One of the best players in the fast break. He's probably second to Giannis Antetokounmpo in open court. So what does that mean? Where does that leave? Well, obviously his shooting isn't, A1. He kind of refuses to shoot. He won't even go to the mid range. So how do you gauge a player like that who has some of the best skill set in all of this list and also has won some games in the playoffs? Don't forget they were one bounce away from Kawhi Leonard's, game winner back in the day. From going close to the finals. They had the best record in the league, or in the East this year. Most of the season without Joel Embiid, or 16 games, I'm going to say a majority of them. He was also healthy during, I think 99% of them, if not 95%. And they're winning games every single time they were criticized, but the W was in the column. So this is a guy who kind of fits in my category. I think I have a much higher on my list, where it's not about how many points and rebounds and assists you have. That seems like when you look at the stat sheet, of course, but he has those intangibles. I think he gets a little too much distracted off the court, probably prevents him from shooting. I don't really know what it is. He enjoys being a celebrity, but he's a quiet guy. He works on the other parts of his game. I mean, he's going to win a Defensive Player of the Year at some point when Rudy Gobert stops being as effective, which could happen at any point. The guy's so lengthy and tall. Can he win MVP at some point? Again, I think yes. So if we're talking about potential moving forward this year, because this list I think is called, the official name of the list was like based on potential, the top 25 players under 25 based on potential. So how can you say he's number 7 when De'Aaron Fox will never be as good defensively? Jason Tatum doesn't give enough effort there. Donovan Mitchell is simply too small to do that. And I guess you can debate with LaMelo, but even then I would have Ben Simmons above him. That's kind of the issue I have where he is, because I'm a big fan of Ben Simmons and the way he plays the game. He's one of the more controversial players in the NBA as well. Number 8 is Devin Booker. Pretty disrespectful. Look, I understand that I don't think he's bad on defense. Maybe not all NBA or defensive all NBA, but does that really matter? Do any of the all-time greats have that? And the ones that do, we put them on Mount Rushmore, like Michael Jordan and so on and so forth. So yeah, if we're talking about, this is just a list of under 25, not even in the league. And he's probably getting close to that number of being one of the best in the league. By far the best scorer. Luka Doncic also kind of has the problem of just shooting too much. He just has the ability to make every shot. So that's why people like him so much. But Devin Booker, it just has an unlimited range in the post and the fadeaway. He has the mid-range jumper, and we all know how good he is from the outside. And now that he has someone to teach him how to win, clearly the W's are starting to fly. A big win over the Utah Jazz a couple games. Pretty bad luck. I mean, they go on a back-to-back, and they face the Clippers the next day, and they lose in a close game. So is it his fault that he's not a leader? Kind of, but that's kind of one of those things where are you born with it or not? I'm not sure you can teach that to anybody necessarily. So I like Devin Booker. I think he deserves to be way higher. He's an absolute Hall of Fame level scorer. I'll go ahead and say that now. There's my hot take of the day. Devin Booker's a Hall of Fame scorer. He will be in the top 10 as long as he stays healthy in points per game, or probably not points per game, but points overall when it's all said and done, because he's been doing it since day one. And now that he has someone to lead the team for him so he doesn't have to do it, he can focus on playing. He'll be put in the right place to win. I think he'll be able to do that. He's already hit big shots throughout his career, but he was never able to influence the guy next to him, especially the Mikal Bridges of the world, who don't really know. Well, I guess, he did win a national title during his time, but overall, they are a pretty young team. And I think DeAndre Ayton's probably the most important part of that relationship. He didn't really know how to communicate with him. He didn't know how to make him a better player. Even though just being around him, I think, makes you better just because you have more space. But Chris Paul has worked with Ayton individually about where he wants to be off the pick and roll. And I don't think he ever had those conversations with Devin Booker. And that's why he's probably not number one on this list, besides the fact that he's just not a great passer, additionally. At number 9, ESPN has Bam Adebayo. Wow. No, I'm just going to say no. Not... No, Ben Simmons is the best defender on this list. Like I said, he's probably number 2. He has developed his offensive game tremendously. He's a big reason they went to the finals, but I'm not sure what makes him so special. Is he truly elite at one thing other than blocking shots? Does he protect the paint like no other? I mean, the Lakers, I feel like, got to the lane quite easily. He was injured. It's kind of one of those things that are hard to gauge, but especially when you look this season, he definitely is not a vocal leader at all. I've never heard him say anything. And if you want someone to be on your team for long term, you would rather because they're going to pay him max money. I think that goes without saying. They're going to be forced to, or another team will do it and you'll go somewhere else. You need a max player to be more than a guy who's a rim protector. The Utah Jazz paid Rudy Gobert, although I don't think it was max money. I think they just paid him a lot, probably more than most people were expecting. He's playing up to that potential, and I've never gotten the seriousness that you want out of a max player too. Rudy Gobert has kind of always been about his business, and when he wasn't and he had his big slip up, with the whole microphone thing, he's kind of changed his tone from now, and now he's having a career season. I'm not sure that's going to happen with Bam Adebayo. They had a pretty heartbreaking loss. They got dominated in the finals. And now that they're like only one game better than the Celtics, they're still dancing in the background in post game. That's going to not, I know it sounds like such a specific thing to knock somebody on, but it's going to keep him out of my top 10. I need a player who's very serious. If I'm talking about future potential and where I think they'll be moving forward when they get closer to 30 years old, when that's, declared someone's prime. At number 10, ESPN had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Really, really difficult to say. A borderline all-star this year. I'm going to go ahead and read his stats as soon as I pull them up. He's kind of in no man's land right now, and I feel really bad for him, right? He goes from a playoff team in the Clippers where it's his emergence. Everybody knows he's coming onto the scene. He's going to be a piece moving forward, and then he just goes to absolutely nowhere. 23.7 points, 5.9 assists, and 4.7 rebounds. Career high in assists, and 3 turnovers. His assist to turnover ratio just isn't fantastic as well. Like none of these guys. I guess the game is faster, so there's naturally going to be more. I don't know. You kind of going to have to make your own opinion on that. He shoots 41% from downtown, so pretty much above league average. That's his biggest appeal besides being ultra athletic. He's already had multiple 40-point games this year. He seems like he can lead his team, but you simply cannot lead the Oklahoma City Thunder. He probably deserves to be in the top 10, if not the 10th spot. This is a round where I'd put him. I don't think this is egregious at all, and I know people are a big fan of him. At number 11, ESPN had Brandon Ingram. Why isn't he in the top 10? That's probably the biggest conversation of the night. Do I feel like he should be? When I think about it, yes. Again, another guy who you can kind of put in that elite scoring category. He's closer to being an elite scorer than De'Aaron Fox is. He's closer to being an elite scorer, I think, than maybe even Jason Tatum. He seems to have the fadeaway down. He seems to want the ball in big moments, but we just talked about it with Zion Williamson. they're horrible. They give up more points than anyone in the game. And I don't think Zion has bad defensive fundamentals. I don't think Brandon Ingram does either. So where's the disparity? The Memphis Grizzlies, I think, have less talent than the Pelicans from top to bottom. So what's going on here? Why is no one rallying behind Brandon Ingram? What seems to be the issue? And why can't he get on track? And why isn't he saying more? Why isn't he more upset about the current state of affairs? He was drafted to be the star of the LA Lakers, didn't say a word during all this trade nonsense. Okay, he's a quiet guy, and you can appreciate that. He goes to the Pelicans, and now he's just getting spit on, basically. Nothing he does matters. If he was outraged by this, he's probably number 9 for me. He would definitely go over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's not much to say about him. I don't know. It's kind of frustrating. Like, shouldn't he be one of the most important players on a playoff team right now? Shouldn't he be at least at the role, or not above the role, of Michael Porter Jr., who I don't have on this list? We'll see moving forward. I still believe in this guy. I still like the way he plays the game of basketball. But right now, I can't give him that much respect. Number 12, they put Jaylen Brown. Yeah, I'm not, a wing 3-and-D player, and now he's scoring at a new rate that we didn't even know was possible. When he came into the league, he had kind of a funky 3-point shot. We knew he was good defensively, but he's gotten better on every single level. I don't really know why he's below Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I guess the way you really have to think about it in this trade and the way they're doing this is, would you trade Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Jaylen Brown straight up? According to this list, the Celtics would accept that immediately. But I don't think that's true, and I think that might be the best way to kind of gauge this interest here. Now, there's lots of other factors when it comes to those kinds of things, like who sends picks which way. But I would say if that's the basis of the trade, the Celtics say no. So clearly I'm putting a lot of aspirations upon him moving forward. Every single player, now that I'm looking at it, have they impacted winning? No, except for one guy who's way down the list, who I'll give a ton of respect to. He's just kind of floating out there for me. It's probably around where he belongs, if not a little bit higher. Number 13, Jamal Murray, a point guard for a playoff team, and played really well. I think this is actually a little low for him too. I probably put him a lot higher. Would I put him over Jaylen Brown? Yeah, I would. Would I put him over Brandon Ingram? Indeed, I would. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Absolutely. He struggled in the beginning this year, but, the beginning of the season, the first 20 games is, who cares? Anybody can do anything at that point. He possesses some elite scoring abilities. I'm actually curious to pull up his stats to see if he has a decent turnover to assist ratio. We all know Jokic is way more important to the team, but it doesn't happen without him as well. Like, they kind of work in tandem more. Jokic absolutely needs that kind of all-star level help. A career high 21.3 points this year, 2.2 turnovers, which has been consistent throughout his career, to 4.8 assists. A 2-to-1 ratio is better than most of the names in the top 10, at least. Looks like 4.0 rebounds. He shoots 41% from the 3-point line. It's also a career high. And he shoots about 86% from the free throw. And only 23 years old. It's one of the best young pieces. It's kind of disrespectful the more I think about it. Like, how can you say that De'Aaron Fox has a better potential than Jamal Murray when we've already seen that he can be a better player at any point in time? It's kind of weird for me. Number 14, they have Michael Porter Jr. I'll go quickly through these other names real quick that I think is insane. So below him at number 15, Ja Morant. Number 16, Trae Young. Number 17, Mikal Bridges. Okay, so I think you're starting to get into that. But Ja Morant and Trae Young, what are we? What? Trae Young is the 4 seed in the East right now. And just because he had a bad head coach, he couldn't impact winning. Let's see here. Yeah.
We talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
We're talking about practice here. Michael Porter Jr. is one of the worst defensive players in the NBA, period. He was baptized in that Utah Jazz series. Unreal. They picked him out. They beat them by like 40 points every single time down the court, no matter who was matched on him. Ingles, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, who cares? Bogdanovich. They went after him and they scored every single time. He has a good, scoring ability. That's his top play. But if you can't play one side of the ball, I'm sorry, you are not going to be compared to a franchise guy like John Morant or Trae Young. And that brings me to my point about John Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies, who looks like they're going to lose in overtime tonight. But he's a unique player. His stats do not jump off the sheet most of the nights. He'll have his 30-point games where he's like, the talk of the world. And other times he'll have 12 points, 6 assists, 8 rebounds. And when you look at that, you're like, oh, no, nothing compared to LaMelo Ball or Zion Williamson. But it's not about that for him. And that's what I think makes him such a special young talent. From day one, which he got to work with Taylor Jenkins, which is probably the best thing you can do for any franchise, is when you bring in a guy who you want to lead forward, buy in with that coach. Don't have a carousel of bad ones or guys who are flashy names, because they're not going to help them develop. And what John Morant has done, he's just bought into team culture. It's not about whatever, your 20-point per game performances. It's about W's. And I think they're riding a 4-game winning streak as of today. And he just wants them to be successful. Keep in mind that they are the 8th seed in the West without Jaren Jackson this entire season, without Justice Winslow most of it, who was a fairly big trade piece. I mean, 2 of their starters, let's just call it there. I think he was going to start originally, or that was the original plan. Haven't been playing with them. Other guys have been in and out of the lineups. They're playing with 2 massive rookies here. And they're just getting a bunch of wins, and it's so cool to see. And Trae Young, I'm putting Trae Young above John Morant. I'm putting him above Jaylen Brown, Brandon Ingram, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Bam Adebayo, De'Aaron Fox. I'll go as far as there because we know he obviously is not good on defense, but neither is Steph Curry. Steph Curry gets hidden on the Golden State defense forever, throughout his entire career. That switch off in the Kyrie Irving big shot that won them the finals, that was a fluke. I mean, they should not have switched off of that one. They should have kept Klay Thompson on him, and it clearly cost them. A player who is averaging some stat lines that we've just never seen from guys, and he's only, I think, in his 3rd season, and I'm going to pull up. When I tell you guys this, and you can say, it's just because he plays for the Hawks. He's averaging less points this season, averaging 29 last year in his sophomore season, so I'm just going to throw that out there, by the way. 25.1 points, 4.3 turnovers to 9.5 assists. The best turnover ratio I've said this entire night. I don't actually know about John Morant's. He might be slightly better. 3.2 rebounds. He shoots 87% from the free throw line. And let's see, 36.5% from downtown. You like to see that go up a little bit. He is shooting 43% as well. But he's the heart and soul of this team. They've been without John Collins for a significant portion of it as well. And, they've just taken their new head coach, who should have never been fired from the Indiana Pacers. That was kind of just a completely embarrassing thing that they had to go through. I think it's just this narrative, right? That coaches don't like the way he plays the game. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Take it up with James Harden. Take it up with Adam Silver, because that's the way the game is played now, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. That's just how I feel. I don't know why people hate him so much. He's a good basketball player, and I'm going to put him promptly where he belongs. I'll pretty much go through the rest of these. I'll give my top 10, and then maybe I'll go over some scores and highlights from tonight. Number 17, Mikal Bridges. Number 18, Domantas Sabonis. Number 19, Anthony Edwards. Number 20, DeAndre Ayton. Number 21, Tyrese Halliburton. Number 22, John Collins. Number 23, Jared Allen. Number 24, Lonzo Ball. Number 25, Colin Sexton. All right, I'll give you guys my list now. Obviously, it's quite different, and you've probably gotten a good idea as I've talked to the show about who I believe belongs where. My top 10, number 1, Luka Doncic. No one's surprised there. Number 2, Zion Williamson. Number 3, Devin Booker. Yes, I believe that high. Number 4, Donovan Mitchell. Number 5 is Ben Simmons. Now, Donovan Mitchell and Ben Simmons is the hardest place to put on my list, right? Ben Simmons is better at rebounding. He's better at assisting. Just every facet of the game. Although Donovan Mitchell's probably, is he more athletic? He probably isn't even there, but he is an elite scorer, and he scores when his team needs him the most. At the end of the day, in the last 30 seconds, you can't give the ball to Ben Simmons. I would never do it. It's always going to be in Joel Embiid's hand. That's kind of where the disparity is for me. Number 6, I have Jason Tatum. Number 7, I have Trae Young. Number 8 is Jaylen Brown. Number 9, LaMelo Ball. And number 10, John Morant. And like I said, those kinds of slots can belong to Jamal Murray, which probably is a better choice, I'll be honest. Jaylen Brown, depends on how you view the value of 3-and-D wing players. So that's basically the list. And I'll give a couple of spots here. Who would I take out and who would I put in, right? Does every player on this list belong on the list that I just said? The first thing I'll say is RJ Barrett is nowhere to be found. And I don't think Kevin's going to make it. He was kind of hoping for him to join me on the show. He says when he gets here, but we got like 10 minutes left, right? So Colin Sexton is good, but Kevin puts it great. We talked about this a couple nights ago. He's like a Lou Williams archetype player. Decent at passing the ball, fast, good at scoring, but he doesn't have the shooting ability of a Lou Williams. I don't think he ever will. And it's also strange to have that player play the point guard position. Lou Williams has always excelled off the bench, but Colin Sexton expected to be their starting point guard night in and night out. He's been significantly better than I thought he would be coming out of his rookie season. I thought his was over. I don't think anyone was paying attention to him in the slightest bit. And then he comes in, he plays up to his ability, and now we're seeing him kind of make big plays at big times on a 20-win, Cavaliers team. But RJ Barrett, man, has way better athleticism. Absolutely. He can be more of a point forward. He's actually a better passer than Colin Sexton, in my opinion. Now, the scoring ability leaves a lot to be desired, but he's getting there. He had a very bad turnover against the Celtics. He did redeem himself in a sense with a 3 and then a meaningless 3 at the end of the game. But come on, if you don't want RJ Barrett on your team at this point, and I'm not saying that RJ Barrett would go at number 25. He'd actually be quite high on my list. I'd have him higher than Anthony Edwards, DeAndre Ayton, John Collins, Jared Allen, Lonzo Ball, Mikal Bridges, Michael Porter Jr., and that's probably where it gets a little dicey. So I'm putting him around that 15-ish range, and I think that's where he belongs. That's another one of those names, I think, on the list that they left out purposely so that people, would talk about it. It's nonsensical, man. The guy's a young kid who clearly loves the game, clearly has a passion for it, wants the New York Knicks to win, and he'll develop that. He's not in the top 10 or anything crazy like that, but he's going to be on the Knicks for a very long time. The other name would be, let's see here, Miles Bridges for Jared Allen. Maybe you wouldn't put that for John Collins. I'm not sure. John Collins has been very injured, but I like Miles Bridges. I think everybody needs a 3-wing player who actually has quite a good ability to, move the ball around, very good at dunking. He's developing his shot a little bit. Let's see if there's at least an uptick in his stats here. And I think Jared Allen is just too much of an easy choice, but he's way too one-dimensional. The guy has almost no offensive game. He's not nearly as strong as you would probably want him to be. He is having Miles Bridges having a little bit of a down year from 13 points to 10.1. Only has about 1 turnover a game, 1.5 to 2 assists, about a steal and a block, 4.5 rebounds. He does shoot 88% from the free throw line, which is absolutely intangible, something that Jared Allen struggles with. And he shoots 38%, which is higher on this list than most of the guys who I'm talking about. And certainly you'll never expect Jared Allen to be able to score at that level. And he's only shooting like 7 shots a game. He's shooting 50%. So a very efficient player, someone who I'd want on my team for a very long time looking forward. Any other names I got left off? It's kind of hard to say. I guess you could guess Brandon Clark. Would you add him to the list? He was on ESPN's last year, and now he's not. He's kind of had a bit of a downtick. And if I go down the list here, I'm not sure. Denny Advia, a lot of rookies obviously were not on this list at all. And that's pretty much about it. So, yeah, that was a pretty interesting list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let's see what's going on in the association tonight. The New Orleans Pelicans get a win over the 76ers, probably their biggest win of the season. I just talked about how they can't do that. Joel Embiid did play in this game. He shot 5 of 16, only 14 points. Tobias Harris went 7 for 16, 23 points. Seth Curry, 0 of 7, 0 points in the loss, which is really, really bad. The New Orleans Pelicans, without Josh Hart, without Lonzo Ball, I got it done with none other than the second best player on my list, Zion Williamson, 37 points, 15 rebounds, 8 assists, 15 for 28 there, 7-11 from the free throw line, no blocks and steals, 2 turnovers, and 2 fouls. I think he's got to improve on those categories quite a bit. If you're a power forward, you need to have a little bit more action, at least on the blocking side. But nonetheless, something that they really needed. The Chicago Bulls, who I did want to talk about a little bit with Kevin, but unfortunately wasn't able to make it. The Hawks beat the Bulls 121-08. The Bulls are riding a 3-game winning streak with Vucevic. Zach LaVine in the loss scores 50 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, but they lost by 12. Unbelievable. Trae Young, who I told you guys, has found a way to impact winning now under new management. 42 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists. No steals or blocked for either of those two. But what a performance. What a night. One of the games I really wanted to watch but got missed today. Danilo Gallinari, who was a game time decision. He scored 20 points, had 6 rebounds and 1 assist. Clint Capella, 22 points, 10 rebounds, the biggest free agent they've gotten in a tremendously long time. The Boston Celtics, who are climbing their way back up in the standings after an embarrassing start, they beat the Timberwolves in overtime, 145-136. Karl Anthony Towns had 30 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and 1 steal. Jason Tatum, who I said is very good but has his off nights, did not have any of those at all. 53 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 block in the performance. Anything else here worth noting? D'Angelo Russell, who is finally getting to play with Karl Anthony Towns, he had a nice night, 26 points on 10 of 18 shooting, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. Jason Tatum at 50 points. Jaylen Brown added with 26, and Marcus Smart with 24. Nothing, not too shabby at all. The Pacers beat the Orlando Magic, and I think I get the backdoor cover. I had the Magic plus 5.5, and that ends up at a 111-106. I wonder if I covered my other game now. I'm trying to forget what it is. Domantas Sabonis was a game-time decision. He ended up playing 16 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks. The Pacers are trying to get back into the playoff picture. They are the 9th seed right now. Will probably have the ability to do so. A really total team effort there. No one on the Orlando Magic other than Terrence Ross, who, I guess they probably should have traded at the trade deadline if they could. 24 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist there in that game. Still in action right now, the Houston Rockets are playing the Clippers. The Clippers have a 51-43 lead with 4:30 left to go in the game. Any matchups or any highlights here? Reggie Jackson is 6 of 6 with 17 points, having his best game in a Clippers uniform. The Wizards are currently leading over the Golden State Warriors, which I think might have been the other game on my ticket. Rui Hachimura leads the way. We'll actually make that Robin Lopez. What a random night in the association outside of all these great 50-point performances. Steph Curry, 14 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist so far there. The Denver Nuggets have a 190 lead over the San Antonio Spurs, who seem to be sliding quite badly right now. And the Charlotte Hornets with a 14-point lead over the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think they're playing with Giannis. Yep, his brother's not playing. No Dante DiVincenzo, no Chris Middleton, no PJ Tucker, no Brook Lopez. One of the worst things you ever see. But rookie Jordan Nwora, one of my favorite guys in the draft, he has at the moment 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 0 assists. It'll be curious to see how he develops. But the Knicks won in overtime, 133-129. The Knicks desperately needed that victory and a pretty bad loss for Memphis. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the Delivering Sports Show. Thank you guys so much for joining. And go ahead and follow me on Twitter, actually. My name is @SpencerTheWiz. You can get some highlights. And if you want to follow my main channel, that's Blue Milk Boys Gaming. Podcast every Monday. Could be Movie Monday. Could be Anime Monday. Also a Tattoo Thursday we did recently. Lots of content for there. A lot of alternative stuff. And also come down to Kickers Sports and Gaming Bar. That is, near the Strip. It's one of the only sports bars over there. Very clean, very nice. A great mosaic on the wall. They also have one of those golf machines, and can't even think of the name now, with sand. You kind of push it, and you try to get it not off the table. I don't know what it is even called anymore, but yeah, that is the Delivering Sports Show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Many more Fridays, many more Delivering Sports shows.
Coach Harvey Hyde is heard right here. AM 1400 KSHP North Las Vegas at kshp.com.
USA Radio News with Wendy King.
The House Ethics Committee is opening a bipartisan investigation into Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. He's being accused of sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, and whether Gaetz shared inappropriate images or videos on the House floor. The Florida Republican is also being investigated by the Justice Department over allegations he had sex with a 17-year-old girl and paid for her travel out of state. If so, he would be breaking sex trafficking laws. Gaetz denies any wrongdoing, and he refuses calls to resign. A prayer vigil held in Bryan, Texas after the deadly shooting at a warehouse on Thursday. The suspect has been identified as 27-year-old Larry Bolin. He's an employee at Kentmore Cabinets where the shooting happened. Police say the suspect has been charged with murder and 5 counts of assault with a deadly weapon.